what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the greatest baseball show on YouTube. It is Baseball Adjacent. I'm your host, Taco Josh. That right there is America's pitching coach and NPA's own Justin Arth. And today, we are being pessimists. This is my favorite thing in life, is just tearing things down. And that's one of my finest qualities in my own personal life. But that's the way this video is going to work, because we're going to tell you one reason that every playoff team will not win the World Series. This is the National League version. So later on, if you're looking for the American League one, that'll be its own separate video. This is National League only. Timestamps for every team will be down in the description. Justin, how are we feeling?
I'm feeling great. I get to be a pessimist now. Like, obviously, one of these predictions is going to be wrong because someone has to win the World Series.
Yep.
But we're looking at the biggest reason why, if they're going to be eliminated. Now, again, knowing how we jinx everything, hey, maybe we've jinxed it and like the Dodgers bullpen or something is now like lights out and Shohei Ohtani has a 20 ERA through playoff games or something. But with that being said, it's time for us to be ultimate pessimists, and let's get into why your team won't win the World Series.
Yeah, I guess first, though, before we jump into a team, to me, let's talk about the overall postseason for a minute. It feels like there's not a super unbeatable team at this moment in history. I feel like normally we come in and there's like, this is the favorite in the American League, this is the favorite in the National League. We kind of expect a World Series. I feel like we don't have that vibe this year. I feel like it's a little different. I think last year we were pretty content with, hey, Yankees Dodgers, this is going to be what we're looking at. This time it feels different.
Yeah, it feels really different because yes, there still is like I believe a 13 game spread between the number one seed overall in Major League Baseball, which is the Milwaukee Brewers at 96 wins, and the Cincinnati Reds at 83 or 84. So then it would be a 12 game. I can't remember the Reds record off the top of my head, but it's either 12 or 13 game spread. But typically that's a similar spread than what we would see anyway. But we typically have at least one or two 100-win teams and teams that feel like they're world beaters. Right now, it feels like Major League Baseball on the National League side and the American League side are wide open for all of these teams. So if one of them gets hot, goes on a run, and they kind of slightly remediate these issues that we're about to talk about, any of these teams can win a World Series this year.
Start National League first. We're gonna go the 1 seed through the 6 seed. That's just the order we're gonna do. And let's start, because the number one team in baseball this year actually is the 97 win Milwaukee Brewers. We don't have a team that gets to 100 wins for the first time in a while. It feels like we always have at least one that at least flirts with it. The Brewers come the closest, and they're 3 games away from it. So not super, super close. But they are the 1 seed. They have the best record in baseball. They're kind of a surprise a little bit. I think Brewers fans kind of expected them to be pretty good. I think the rest of baseball expected them to be pretty good, but I don't know that any of us expected them to have the best record in baseball. It feels like they are overperforming a little bit. I'll defer to you. What's the reason that they're not going to win the World Series?
Because they can't hit homers. So you look at their season stats, they've only had two hitters in their entire lineup hit over 20 home runs, and that's Jackson Churio, who still hasn't played the whole year because I believe he battled injuries at points,
Mm-hmm.
and Christian Yelich. And Yelich, of that, is the only player on the Milwaukee Brewers to have 100 or 100 plus RBIs on the season. So this has been a team that has over relied on the pitching staff. Now they have a good staff from the starters to the bullpen to Trevor McGill at the back end to be able to trust. I mean, you've got Peralta, you've got Priestry, Mezarowski was really good at one point or another. The pen is good, like I said, with McGill holding it down, but then Juan Uribe and Ashby and Koning, those are guys that are really locking down like innings 6 through 9 or 5 through 9 if like a Peralta only goes 5. But either way, like they're trusting the pitching too heavily. And my question for them is, okay, have you trusted the pitching too much to even get you here to where now with your offense scoring runs unconventionally in a way, like they are hitting a lot of singles, they are getting a decent amount of walks, bringing people in, like they're playing a more unconventional baseball for this style of age that we're in baseball. and you got to be able to hit homers in the postseason. A lot of the things that like push a team over the top or what seals a victory. Like I go back to 21 when Jorge Soler smacked that home run that still has not landed in Houston. Like home runs are the flashy play, but they're also the thing that like can really kill any momentum for the other team. And if you're not able to hit homers and you can't do it in bunches, or if your star players can't perform and hit home runs in those bunches, it's one of those things. It's kind of like, okay, can you move forward in the postseason for longer than just the division series? They've got the pitching, but the offense either needs to score a ton of runs or they need to start hitting more homers, and they're not hitting homers. So I think that's their biggest hole in their lineup.
Yeah, I'll go in a little bit of a different vein. So, just statistically, the Brewers, they only have two guys that have more than 20 homers this season. You're looking at Jackson Churio, who, as Justin said, didn't play the full year. He missed about a month due to injuries. And then Christian Yelich got himself to 29 homers. Everybody else is high teens or single digits in their starting lineup. The thing that I think gives them hope is that Cleveland's hitting, and we'll talk about Cleveland in a bit. They don't hit homers, but their offense this whole year has been objectively pretty bad. The Brewers' offense has found a way to run and take the extra base and do all that and produce runs without the long ball. And I think because they've done that for the long season, I kind of trust it a little bit more than I would a team that hasn't done that. Um, but that is a concern because I like a home run is a great way to get runs. It is a lot harder to string together, a single, and a double and get two runs in the postseason just because the pitching is elevated, everybody's adrenaline is up. My reason that I don't think the Brewers are going to win the World Series is they're young. This is a young team. This is sometimes that works in your favor, and it's like, hey, they don't know what's going on, and it's kind of working. I worry about their roster being able to handle it. Now, they've been here in the past. They do have to exercise the demons of the playoffs last year, getting bounced by the Mets, unfortunately, in a pretty devastating way. That was not like we were there and it was fun and we got bounced and whatever. That was a pretty devastating way to get bounced last year. And the roster is young, and I do worry about their ability to exercise those demons because they do have the veteran leader in Yelich, obviously. But beyond that, I mean, Reese Hoskins is the next oldest guy at 32 years old. And then it's a bunch of mid to young 20 somethings that are just kind of doing things and who haven't really had the long list of experience. So that's kind of my concern. And that's like, I do think that there's a really good chance that they're able to overcome it. But that is the reason that I have chosen that they won't. I don't know if that's wild to say or what.
No, not at all. Because this feels like at the very least, this is a year that maybe we expected Milwaukee. Like you can go back to our first episodes. Like I didn't expect Milwaukee to be this good. I thought they would be okay, but I didn't think they were going to be this good. I thought Chicago was going to be head over heels above everybody. I thought maybe they were a wild card team or maybe the 3 seed at best, kind of like how the NL Central champion has kind of always been over the last decade.
Hmm.
But yeah, they're the 1 seed. You're a little bit ahead of schedule, but at the same time, you're going into the dance and you got a good chance. But this also feels like if you are eliminated, this is a very good foundation year for this young core that we can hope to anticipate is going to be good for 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. Let's move on here. The 2 seed in the National League is your Philadelphia Phillies. They finished at 96 wins. They were about a game behind Milwaukee for that best record in baseball. I'll defer to you once again. Why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so for me, when I look at this team in the National League in particular, I do think they are the most complete team in the National League, and they are a team that I feel like has the greatest chance to be the National League representative, holding that National League pennant in the World Series. But I think the thing that, despite them being a deep team, I think the thing that could hold them back is the injuries and suspensions. So I'm going to say Trey Turner, even though I know he was just activated from the injured list, because again, he's going to have time, but where is the at bats coming from to get him back on schedule? So I still think might play a factor. Zach Wheeler, Trey Turner, Jose Alvarado with the PED suspension that can't play in the postseason. Jordan Romano, who was terrible all year, so maybe that's better that he's not playing, but he's still not in the bullpen either, at least in mid relief. I mean, they are waiting to the DS to start playing, which is good. And you have Schwarber, Harper, and Turner that if Turner again can get back into the lineup and play the way that he's played all year, they'll be fine. But it's a question mark of, hey, when Zach Wheeler is not your ace in the rotation, you've got pitchers like Luzardo, Sanchez, Suarez, Walker, and heck, even Bueller, as long as Nola's left off the rotation, that you think, okay, this is a perfectly fine, actually pretty good rotation to go into a postseason series with. Not just 3 games, not just five, not just best of 5, but best of 7 series. And but still not having that workhorse in Zach Wheeler, your team captain, your leader, the guy that goes on the bump in game 1 and game 7 and absolutely shoves and wins you everything, like that I think hurts. Alvarado hurts the bullpen despite them having 2 really good back end arms with Duran and then Strom, who's kind of not necessarily come out of nowhere, but has elevated a role and been really good at elevating that role. So I just think for the Phillies, since they are a very complete team, I think you can expect pitching to be good out of them. Offense, I think you can expect to be fairly good with them, at least with the top 3 or 4 in their lineup if Trey Turner does come back. But because of injuries, they might be, if guys are playing like a Trey Turner, they might be slow starters. And there's not a lot of time for slow starts when you're already in the DS in the postseason. So and then you don't have those games to get right either. So I think that's their biggest issue. You could always bring up Castellanos not hitting well. You can always bring up Stott and Baum and anybody on the bottom half of that lineup and JT Realmuto not performing very well offensively. But at the end of the day, those guys have baseball cards, and now it's the postseason. These games matter. And some of these guys, yeah, like baseball's a timing thing, but some of these guys can turn it on, and I feel like they are a complete team despite that. And if anything's going to knock them off, it's going to be not having your ace in Zach Wheeler. And if Trey Turner can't get on and get this lineup started early for like a Schwarber and a Harper to get things around, like injuries might be the reason why this team gets bounced.
Yeah, they're a little banged up. Trey Turner's coming back from injury. Alec Boehm is coming back from injury. Zach Wheeler, as you said. To me, I think it's the starting pitching. I think if they are able to get it to the bullpen, it'll be okay because we have seen you can win a World Series. The Nationals showed it in 2019. You can win a World Series with like 2 or 3 relievers. Um, my question is, outside of Christopher Sanchez and like I don't feel good about Nola in the postseason if he needs a start. And if they make a deep run, Nola's going to have to start a game more than likely. And probably that's going to be a pretty big game because that'll line up to be like a game 4 or a game 5 in a series, right? And I think the top end of the pitching is fine. Like Christopher Sanchez, nobody's questioning that. I worry about as you get down the loss of Zach Wheeler, which is tough, but the loss of Zach Wheeler, I think it bumps like Christopher Sanchez. You feel really good about if he's facing, a team's second best pitcher. You don't feel as good if, like, say, Taijuan Walker is facing a team's second best pitcher, or Aaron Nola is having to face a team's third best pitcher, right? I worry about the starting pitching. I worry about the depth of the starting pitching, I suppose. I think the top end is going to be fine, but I think once you get to that third and fourth game in a series, you're not going to be able to run guys out on 2 or 3 days rest every single time. Eventually that's going to catch up to you. And I worry about that. That's the reason that I think the Phillies won't win the World Series is the depth of starting pitching. You can have a lack of depth in the bullpen, or you can have a lack of depth in the rotation, but you can't really have both. And it feels a little bit to me like the Phillies have a bit of both.
Yeah, you're going to have to trust, if you are the Phillies, you're going to have to trust Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez in games 1 and 2 go deep to save the bullpen as much as possible so that when Taijuan Walker goes out there and potentially shoves for only 4 innings and the bullpen's going to have to pull the other 5 out their butt, like you're not overtaxing the bullpen because I mean that was a big question in like the 2016 World Series with the Cubs.
Yeah.
At one point, over that ended up taking it over and winning the World Series, obviously. But yeah, I mean, you can't overtax your bullpen in situations like this, but you got to throw your best guys because every game is like win or go home, pretty much.
Yeah, let's move on here. The third best team, the team that broke baseball this offseason. They're supposed to be the best team in baseball. Everybody was screaming about we need to add a salary cap because the Dodgers were going to be too good. And they are the 3 seed. They did not have the season that they were hoping. And a big part of that is the reason that I'm going to say, and that's the pitching. Specifically for me, it's the bullpen. I I am more optimistic on the starting pitching for them than I am the bullpen. I am legitimately concerned about their bullpen. I worry about Tanner Scott because at some point Scott is going to have to pitch a big eighth or ninth inning. I'm quite sure. I'm worried about Yates. I'm worried about the rest of that group. Now the Dodgers have always been able to pop out arms and it be okay. But I get the vibe this year just because of all the injuries and all the other stuff that likely is. It feels less likely that that is going to happen this postseason, where we get a like. I remember Brudzar Gratterall a couple of years ago being like, "Where did this guy come from? How do they have another guy that's just throwing 101?" And I'm sure that will happen for somebody in the Dodgers bullpen, but they're going to need like 3 or 4 of those. The way that the last month or so has gone. And I know Dodger fans are going to say we've looked better in the last week, and that's true, but I don't know how sustainable that is.
Yeah, well, speaking of 3 or 4 guys that can, the guys that have had to take elevated roles with Blake Trinan and Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates not being it have been Alex Vesia, Dreyer, Anthony Banda, and Robleski, I believe I'm saying his name correctly. Those guys have stepped up into roles, but I still again feel like the bullpen is the biggest issue for the Dodgers. It is kind of easy to say, okay, this offense has been hot and cold too. You've got star power, but they're not necessarily producing all the way. Like the stat of they've not won a game all year if they haven't scored more than 4 runs. Like that is something there. But again, if your pitching is as good as it should be, 1 through 4. They're one of those teams that you feel like, okay, they can maybe scratch and claw to get 5. They've got enough star power to get 5 runs, or heck, maybe they win a 4-3 game. But it goes back to the bullpen of Ken and Alex Vesia, Ken a Jake Dreyer or Jack Dreyer, Anthony Banda, Robleski, guys that are being forced into bigger elevated roles potentially. Can they live up to that standard that they've kind of set themselves up for in the regular season now? And can they come through in those big moments? Because Blake Trinan and Tanner Scott will have to throw some of those, but you might not be inclined to just throw those guys out there in game one of in the ninth inning of a 4-3 ball game, hoping that you get it done. You want to go to a guy that's maybe more proven. And what you'll find with me later is rookies in the postseason. Despite me seeing Ian Anderson like shove as a rookie in the World Series and in the playoffs in general, I'm still kind of against rookies in the postseason because they are so volatile. They are so inconsistent, and you never know what they're going to get. Kind of like what we just talked about with the other teams that we just talked about here being too young with the Brewers. Like, just you throw a young guy out there, you never know what you're going to get. It's sink or swim, and it's the highest pressure moment there. So, bullpen for the Dodgers. But this offense does give me a little bit of issue, but they have been a little better. And again, I'm pulling my Brian Snitker out. They have baseball cards. So I do believe they'll be fine, but the starting pitching is going to have to take a pretty hefty load if they want to really go defend this title and get a second one.
Yeah. Let's move on here. Let's move on to the Chicago Cubs. They are the 4 seed. They were meant to win the NL Central. I think as everybody was doing their picks, we all penciled in the Cubs because they were meant to have the best team in that division. I think we all would have had the Cubs and Brewers flipped at the beginning of the year. Feels fair, the way that things shook out. But that is not how it worked out. The Cubs won 90 games, which is it's not a bad season. That's actually a pretty good season. And they are hosting a wild card round. I'm going to throw a curveball at you, Justin. My reason that I don't think the Cubs are going to win the World Series might very well be the Padres. Because I think if they get through the Padres, I'm feeling pretty good about the run that they may go on. But Man, the Padres are a tough first draw in that opening series. Look, the Cubs arguably have maybe the deepest lineup that we see in the postseason. There's a couple of other ones that you could argue that, but I mean 1 through 9, there's not necessarily an easy out if everybody's clicking. So there is kind of some wiggle room. Say if PCA isn't there all the way, or if Kyle Tucker has an off series, like you have other guys like Dansby Swanson or Nico Horner. Michael Bush has been good. Carson Kelly, we talked about on the last podcast, is super capable of going on random tears. And honestly, the starting pitching, it worries me a little bit, but it feels like it's okay. It feels like a bunch of guys that are like would be a great 2 or 3 starter somewhere, but they have like 5 of them. And that to me feels okay. Like I think you can win a World Series with that. And the bullpen is not like untouchable, but again, that also feels decent. So I think if they get through the Padres, man, they've got a legitimate shot. But I just in a 3 game series, that's the biggest one that worries me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I would completely agree with you on that one because I kind of have this like weird feeling about the Chicago Cubs of like I feel like although it might be a dogfight, they can get through that. And what the bracket looks like for them moving forward looks pretty favorable. So, but for me, I think the one thing that could hold them up other than the San Diego Padres is slumping stars. I think
Okay.
Kyle Tucker has not been good at all. He's, I think, the worst hitter according to Fangraphs currently in the last 10 days on the Chicago Cubs. Pete Crow Armstrong was amazing through the first half of the season, but then once the All Star break hit, he's been a shell of himself. And then Matthew Boyd is starting to kind of hit a wall, which again, he's been really, really good. He was an All Star since the All Star break, kind of fallen off the face of the cliff. Colin Rea was really good at one point. And is struggled as of late as well. And that's where then you're like, okay, who else on the pitching staff do we have? Okay, Shota Imanaga, he'll be fine. But you lost Justin Steele, your ace, before the season really even started. So yeah, you've played all year with him or without him, excuse me. But it's still now the postseason. Pitching now matters, and you need someone like that there. Well, the National League Rookie of the Year of Cade Horton is going to miss time too. He's not going to pitch in the wild card series because of an injury there. So you're missing more pitching, and now again, playoffs are about pitching, and playoffs are about stars. And so what you need is you need stars to go out and ball. You need them to mash. You need them to make big plays. And the offense has been really hot as of late that we're not star players. You still have Dansby Swanson on that team that knows how to win. I've seen him do it in 2021. So you've got a team, you've got a lineup, you've got a rotation that if they get hot, you can feel comfortable with them taking on anybody they'd have to face in the American League or the National League. But I do feel like the slumping stars might be the one thing that holds them back if a Kyle Tucker goes 1 for 10 in the wild card series, or if Pete Crow Armstrong can't get on base and use the legs to kind of extend and get to second base or get to a third base and give them more opportunities for runs. But defense never slumps, and Pete Crow Armstrong, at the very minimum, needs to be making plays out there in center field.
Yeah. I would entertain the idea if somebody commented that this is the best 1 to 9 lineup. There are obviously guys that are better individually. I'll cite Aaron Judge is the best offensive player in baseball. Cal Raleigh is the best catcher in baseball. Certainly, Otani is, I think, better than anybody in the Cubs lineup, and I don't think that's like much of a debate. But I think 1 through 9, that lineup as a unit, it has less holes than other people on paper. Should everybody be clicking, that's an impossibly hard lineup to get through. I know you'd point at the Brewers, but the Brewers have Joey Ortiz, and I feel bad about calling out Joey Ortiz specifically, but there's that.
Shout out Joey Ortiz.
Yeah, there's a couple of like 60 and 70 OPS plus guys that are role players for the Brewers where if you flip over to the Cubs, everybody in their lineups at 100 or above or at least high 90s. And that again, I understand that's not a perfect stat, but just like the quick and dirty of it is, I think the Cubs lineup is really, really good 1 through 9. It's going to be tough to get through. Let's talk Padres for a minute. They are a really good team. The Padres also a 90 win team. The Cubs are a 92 win team. I may have misspoke earlier, so that's my mistake. But the Padres are a 90 win team. They go 90 and 72. Pretty good season for them. Obviously, they have to overcome the Dodgers every year, and they gave it a good run. They were in that division race for a while. Here's my reason that I don't think the Padres are going to win is the starting pitching.
Cubs.
Well, yes, but more specifically, the pitching. Their bullpen is incredible. They added even after the Jason Adam injury, they added like Mason Miller. They have 5 guys in that pen that are untouchable when they're on. The problem
Something.
is getting it to the pen, right?
Yeah.
I super trust Nick Pivetta. That is as good of a big game pitcher, in my opinion, as you are going to find in this postseason. If there's like a game 7 or like a 1 game deal, Nick Pivetta is up there on guys that I would feel comfortable giving the ball to. The problem comes after that, right? You have Michael King, who's been fine. Dylan Cease has not been great. Yu Darvish has been objectively terrible this entire year, and I'm not sure if that's due to injury or what. He hasn't played the full season, so I imagine there's some of that. But as you go down the rotation, it gets weak quickly. And so I don't trust that they're going to be able to get it to their bullpen that is incredible and is really good and is all of those things. Even if the starters are only asked to go 4 or 5 innings, that's going to tax that bullpen pretty immensely, I think. And I question if they're going to be able to make a deep run because of that. Obviously the lineup pretty good, right? Your top 6 or 7 are all solid, but it's starting pitching to me.
Yeah, I would echo the same thing you said. I just called it something different. I said a two top heavy rotation. Nick Pavetta, obviously your big game 1, game 7 starter. We've seen Michael King be really, really good in the postseason last year. We saw Dylan Cease be really good at times. But then right after that, it falls off with again, Cease hasn't been very good this year. JP Sears, since coming over, hasn't been amazing. He's been okay, but hasn't been amazing. Yu Darvish has not been good. Robert Suarez has not been necessarily amazing. And so getting it to the back half of that bullpen where you've got 5 guys pumping 90 plus miles an hour, and they're all untouchable, they're all lights out. Like you don't want to consistently overtax that bullpen because you could very well throw all 5 of those guys in one game. And so the offense, I will at least just mention this to be slightly different. The offense on paper is really good. They've done enough to win 90 games this year. But Manny Machado has not been really good as of late. He's been one of the worst hitters in this lineup. I believe when I looked, it was like a 24 WRC plus or something on Fangraphs over the last 10 days. Fernando Tatis's WRC plus is not as high as I would like to see it. So do we see a vintage playoff Tatis? And I say vintage like Tatis is old. He's not. But
Yeah.
do we see vintage playoff Fernando Tatis Jr.? Do we see Xavier Bogaerts or Jackson Merrill start to step up back to the star standard that they have? It goes back to what I said about the Cubs. You have star players. They need to start performing like stars and not just being maybe above average big leaguers. Like it's the postseason now. You've got a team on paper that could rival the Phillies and the Cubs for one of the more complete teams and has a legitimate shot of winning this World Series and getting your first if you're the San Diego Padres. Like you've got to be able to step up and perform when lights are brightest. But again, the real reason why they probably won't win the World Series is a two top heavy rotation. And if you have to rely on a lot of those guys in that rotation, probably not going very far.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think they're in a tough spot rotation wise. I think I want to credit the Padres. I want to credit the GM specifically for buying at the deadline and putting them in this
Oh, he's always
position.
going to go for it.
Yeah, I mean this is what teams should do, right? You should always be trying to win and better your team, and they made legitimate moves to like get their team better to be in this position. They added Ryan O'Hearn, who is maybe the best bench bat we're going to see in the postseason. And they added Mason Miller, who's maybe the best gun for hire bullpen guy we're going to see in this postseason. Freddie Fermin is no slouch at catcher. Um, and, all of that. And I still just feel like the hole is starting pitching. And I think that that's fair. I think Padres fans would probably agree with us if you were to look at the roster kind of objectively. If you were to pick a weakest spot, I think that that's it. I think once you get past the top one or two starters, that's kind of where we're at.
And the last thing to kind of put the bow on this for the Padres is the one good thing about the Padres you can take from this is a lot of those guys, again, pulling the Brian Snitker, they have baseball cards. You've seen them be really good before. So it can you Darvish kind of pull it out and be vintage you Darvish? Can Michael King and Dylan Cease get back to doing what they did last year? I saw it with my own eyes in the wild card round against the Braves. So can they get back to doing what they typically do or what they should be expected to do because of the level of talents they are? I would still lean on the side of maybe no because we've seen 162 this year from them, and you are who you are lately. So I would lean on that side that they don't. That's why I kind of have this good feeling about the Cubs. But they will give the Cubs a good run for their money, and they do have baseball cards, so they very well could.
Yeah, I do think the short series kind of favors San Diego. It doesn't favor them, but it makes
Yeah,
this series a little bit more winnable against the Cubs as they
yeah.
start today, actually, probably as you're watching this, if you're watching this on the Tuesday of the wild card round. Uh,
Well, if you're 2 or 3, you throw, shove, that's gonna be enough, and
yeah,
that's what you've got.
that's the I you kind of you don't love it when front offices come out and they're just like, yeah, the playoffs are a crapshoot. But then you get to these 3 game series and they're right. Like these just kind of are
Absolutely.
crapshoots for better or worse.
It's
Um,
not until you get to 7-game series that you could actually start seeing the best team win overall.
yeah, absolutely. Let's talk Reds for a minute. Why don't you give me the rundown on the Reds? What are you feeling?
Yeah, for them, the reason why they're not going to win the World Series is I don't think they have enough offense or not enough pop in their lineup. So the Reds are the worst offense in Major League Baseball that is in the postseason. And they're going to need to over rely on a pitching staff that has been overall pretty good. I believe, they're 12th in MLB and ERA. So again, solid pitching staff. Ellie De La Cruz, Tyler Stevenson, and Spencer Steer have all had down seasons concerning what we would kind of think of them overall if you are a true ball knower. But then Ellie De La Cruz and Tyler Stevenson, as of late, have been like super hot coming into postseason. So can they continue to keep it up? TJ Friedel's been like the third best hitter consistently on this roster the entire season. So the great thing about that is TJ Friedel continue to keep it up. Miguel Andujar, I should say, has been really good all year as well. But Matt McLean has been absolutely nowhere. And you look up and down this lineup, Key Brian Hayes, another one that they traded for at the deadline. They just don't have enough offense, in my opinion, to keep up with some of these other offenses in the National League. But the one thing that plays in their favor, though, is they do have a pitching staff of Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott and Nick Lodolo and Zach Littell, at least a solid 4 that you could trust in the postseason to get to a Santillan, to get to an Emilio Pagan, who have been really, really good this year for a team that you wouldn't expect to have a really good back end reliever like Emilio Pagan. And most people may not even really think of Emilio Pagan as a top end closer, but he's performed like one this year. So if this offense can score runs, if Ellie can get on base, use the athleticism to steal the extra base, get in scoring position, and allow the mashers like Tyler Stevenson, TJ Friedel, Spencer Steer to kind of get balls up into the air. There's a shot. And you're going to have a shot in round 1 because you play the Dodgers. And if you can get to the bullpen, if you can get the starters out, get to the bullpen, allow your starters to go as deep in the playoffs, or excuse me, as deep into a game as possible, you've got yourself a shot. But I just don't know they have the offense to get it done, especially when you are facing an offense like the Dodgers in round 1. You're going to have to really rely on that pitching staff.
Yeah, I would second that. I think the biggest question for the Reds is the offense. I mean, you're looking at a team with a bunch of below average hitters, and that sucks to say, but that's kind of where they're at. They don't like Ellie De La Cruz is one of the premier talents of baseball. Obviously, he's got all the tools, and then once you get kind of after that, it's like Austin Hayes, Friedel, Miguel Andujar has been shockingly good since he showed up in Cincinnati. Um, and then it's a bunch of guys that are average or slightly below statistically, and sometimes you see those guys rise to the moment, but normally when that happens, they're on a team of guys that there's coverage on that, and they don't need multiple of those guys to rise to the moment. So I'm not saying it can't happen
Yeah.
for them, but that is my worry is like, what is Matt McClain, as good as he is and as good as he projects to be in the future? What is he going to give you in a 3-game series where he's facing Blake Snell and probably Otani if we get to a game 3? Like, what is Spencer Steer going to give you in that high pressure situation when you get to, we talked bad about the Dodgers bullpen, but it's still, you have to figure out how to hit off of Tanner Scott and like Kirby Yates and Alex Vesia and all those other guys that are out there. So I think it's the offense. There's no question in my mind, at least, that the pitching is going to be pretty solid. It's just, can the offense put up runs in any meaningful capacity?
They need five they need 5 per game in 3 games or 2
Yep.
games.
Yep. And they'll advance. Let's so that puts a bow on the National League. I think who's your I guess let's pause and talk about the NL for a minute. Who's your best team in the National League? Who's your pick to make it out of the National League?
So I think the best team in the National League and my pick to get it to come out of the National League are two different. I think the Philadelphia Phillies are the best team in the National League. I think top to bottom. I know you question their rotation. I don't necessarily question that rotation as much. I think they've at least got 4 guys that you can kind of trust, and a 5th and 6th guy that can at least be thrown out there if needed. But I do think the Phillies are the most complete team in the National League. But my pick to get out of it is the Chicago Cubs. Maybe I am kind of jinxing them right now. So you can come back and clip this later and throw me on it like I know you will, Josh, when the Cubs
Yeah.
ultimately get swept by the Padres in 2 here in 2 days. But if they do get by San Diego, which again is a tough task, it's going to be a really good series. But if the Cubs get through, I think the Cubs legitimately have a shot to stack up against like a team like the Phillies, and get to a World Series and get back there almost 10 years to the time they broke the curse. So I'm kind of feeling the Cubs in the National League. My head wants to say the Philadelphia Phillies. My heart and slash head kind of wants to say the Chicago Cubs. So I'm rolling with the Cubs to get out of the National League. What about you?
I think I gotta go Phillies, I think. I think that there's a real chance they play the Reds. Like, there is beyond a realistic chance that they're taking on the Reds. And I think that they would beat the Dodgers even if they had to play the Dodgers. And I just think over a 7-game series, the Phillies I like better than I do either like the Cubs or Brewers, is what that would come down to. That would be one of the two teams they're facing likely, because I don't see a way the Padres get to that point. Um, I think the Phillies. I think the Brewers are the best team.
Okay.
I think 1-9. I like the lineup. It's not as good as the Cubs, but I like the lineup, and I like kind of the rest of what they've got going a little bit. But I think the Phillies, I think there's something to in the postseason. You're right, it's stars and pitching, but I also think there's something to, hey, we've been here before, and we've kind of done this. Now the Phillies haven't finished the job in a while, but they've been here before, right? And I think I will take that as a slight edge over any of the other teams that could pop out. I just don't trust. I trust the Phillies slightly more than I would the Dodgers, we'll say, or the
And that's
Cubs.
that's a fair assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess if you made it to the end of this video, I applaud you because this is going to be a long one. Justin, give us a player to comment at the end.
Yeah, we're gonna go different. We're not gonna go player this time. We're gonna
Okay.
go ball knowledge. Comment the term ball knowledge if you made it to the end of this video, because every single person that made it to the end of this video, you now have ball knowledge. All right. So you're
Yeah.
commenting ball knowledge. I'll see it in the comments. I'll heart it. I'll favorite it. I'll comment on my own personal YouTube channel. You're going to be pinned first person to do it too. So go comment ball knowledge.
Yeah, and hit that subscribe if you're new. And let's get ready to watch some baseball, guys. This is going to be a fun month, and we'll catch y'all in the next one. Take it easy.
Yeah, bye.